And don't forget, we welcome your thoughts about matters affecting you or the city and what we have on the show anytime. So please send us a message on Twitter at City Matters TV or email us through citymatters@cable14.com. Well, with this year's federal election set to take place in less than 6 months and the momentum of the Green Party's representation growing in the provinces of PEI and British Columbia, some might be considering whether the Green Wave will be hitting the shores of Ontario in this next election. Our next guest may be part of the answer to that question. So to share more about her Green Party candidacy for the riding of Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas, we welcome Victoria Galea. Victoria, nice to see you today. Thank you for coming on in.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I guess one of my first questions is, you're a busy woman right now, going to school, and you're looking at taking on this challenge. How are you looking at juggling everything at once?
Well, our graduation is actually in October, which is the same time as election, and we've actually wrapped up all of our courses and exams, so I only have one paper left to go. So I find it will be hopefully smooth sailing.
And the reason you wanted to join the Green Wave, if you will?
Yeah, so I actually originally wanted to be an environmental lawyer, but when I was doing all my research on climate change, I realized that there isn't enough time to take going to law school and getting into a firm, and if I did my PhD as well, by the time I spent 5 years writing a book on climate change, we're going to be past the breaking point of catastrophic climate change damage. And so the Green Party, I think, is the only party that takes climate change action responsibly, and that is something I want to be a part of.
As I alluded to off the tees, we see what's happening in PEI. We saw what happened in British Columbia. We know what's happening here in Ontario with some representation now at the provincial level. Is the Green Wave really starting to build that momentum? And what introduced you to it, aside from being environmental, going in for environmental studies, I should say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I was introduced not only through my studies, but through my activism at school. So I was a part of the World Wildlife Foundation in my undergrad, and that exposed me to the detriment species face to climate change, but also how we have over 1 million species that are going to be extinct within the next few years based on climate change, and humans are definitely approaching that line as well.
Are you finding more and more students in the high school levels into college, university, are being more sensitive to climate change and what is going on or what isn't going on out there, for that matter?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we saw with Greta Thunberg out in Europe that she is taking a strong stance on climate change, and Fridays for Our Future is something that I was happy to be a part of with the Canada-wide strike last Friday. And I think that young people are definitely making a move towards taking climate change seriously and showing that it's our future that we have a direct impact on. So looking at a candidate who may be younger, I have more incentive to make climate change action, and I think that's more important to young people.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. We've seen Sam Oosterhoff, a young candidate, win successfully, now making his name out there and making some strides. In regards to the age side of things, what more do you feel that you can bring potentially to this riding?
Yeah, I think a modern education is really important. The things that I just finished learning in school throughout my undergrad with an honors Bachelor of Arts degree in political science and my master's in international relations is very different than the current old white male politicians, their education that they've received in not only political science, but in science in general, environmental science and earth science that I've taken at McMaster. And so I think bringing this modern education to politics and looking at current issues, climate change moves so quickly and we need to adapt and move along with it.
So how would you go about, because I know the HWAD area somewhat, I've grown up in the area as we talked about before we came on camera here. In certain pockets, it does seem like an older demographic. What is going to be your message to the older voters who kind of vote the old school way? And I'm just kind of ad-libbing what you said.
Yeah, so I think that our area, especially in Dundas, that community was negatively hit by the flooding that recently occurred in the last few years. And this is something that will increase in frequency and intensity. And by choosing a party like the Green Party, you're able to focus on better infrastructure, and we want to protect these homes and these local businesses that were negatively impacted by the flooding that occurred. And I think to say to older voters, we're not just a single issue party, and we also focus on things like removing the mandatory age for retirement, protecting Canadian pension plans. When we saw corporations like Zellers and Sears go bankrupt and we're able to remove these pensions from hardworking Canadians and still accept millions of dollars in bonuses that same year is simply unacceptable. And seniors are not a for-profit business, and we need to stop treating them that way.
This decision obviously doesn't come lightly to put your name out there to expose who you are. What advice have you been given? Who have you reached out to kind of go through this journey over the next few months?
Yeah, well, definitely I've been in contact with Elizabeth May. We have weekly Zoom meetings, and so that's been really great. Just the Green Party feels very interconnected, even though we just said they're out in BC and PEI, but we still have a very family feeling as a political party, and I'm able to easily reach out to members that have been elected for their advice, but also Jason Lopez from Hamilton Centre riding. He is my campaign manager this election, and so he has been able to provide me with some wonderful insight into what to expect, especially when we are in the era of fake news, unfortunately, and a lot of people are telling me to prepare myself for when people say things that you have said which are simply not true. And so I think this era of fake news and the fact that political parties do not need to adhere to the truth in advertising laws that other broadcasting agencies have to is unacceptable, because to have a party that simply believes that climate change doesn't exist is extremely harmful to our planet and Canadian citizens.
Have you reached out or have you spoke to Mike Schreiner at all?
Yeah, so we were hoping he could chair my nomination meeting, actually, but he is a very busy person as he's an elected official. But yes, so we have spoken, and I'm hoping that we can connect on other events. As I said, the Green political party is very community oriented, and so between working with the candidates out in Milton and hopefully one will be picked soon for Burlington, I definitely think that we'll have a lot of events and welcoming Elizabeth May to come here to the Hamilton area as well.
The Green Party is so known for climate change, but there is so much more to your group. Would you mind touching upon some more of your platform specifics, just so people aren't so gouged up in it's all about green and saving the trees? Big part of it by all means, but there's so much more. Can you elaborate, please?
Absolutely. I think that preventative healthcare is a definitely strong platform of our campaign, because we waste so much money worrying about people's health issues after they've happened, that we're not saving money by taking preventative actions such as safe injection sites. As we've seen, the Conservative government slash these safe injection sites. We were supposed to have one here in Hamilton that's now no longer happening, and we've seen them successfully occur out in British Columbia, with the rates of HIV drastically decreasing after these things occur. I think taking a stance on preventative healthcare instead of just constantly worrying about the solutions, we're going to be eliminating those people that are waiting in our emergency rooms and the amount of money we're spending on our healthcare system.
If you'd like to further elaborate, I know that you mentioned preventative healthcare, free tuition for all, inequality towards women and people of color, wage gap. Care to touch on those as well?
Yeah, I think women and people of color, it's unacceptable that we are paid less than white males. The fact that I can make 80 cents for every dollar that a white man makes in this country is unacceptable. And the fact that a Latino woman only makes 54 cents to what every dollar of a white man is unacceptable. We need to work on workers' rights and make it transparent to the employer and be able to openly talk about what our wages are in our workplace, because we should all be treated fairly and with respect, and this is not something that's currently happening in our country.
Going up against the big red and the big blue, they're out there. What are some of your campaign ideas and thoughts on how you can position yourself against the incumbent, especially in Philomena Tassi, who's a veteran who's been at it for a very long time?
Yeah, absolutely. Although Philomena Tassi is not a white male, but it is typically a white male boys club, and this is something that we need to break the barriers on. As a young person who is more invested in the future of our country, as it's something that I hope to one day see, I think that it is important to break through these traditional ways of voting, and it's not just a two-party system in Canada, and we need to stop treating it that way. I think that the wins we've seen in PEI and British Columbia have shown that strategic voting is not something you need to adhere to. If you'd like to vote for the Green Party, that's something you should be open to do, and I think that these cases have shown us that we need to stop just voting strategically and voting one way because we don't want one opposition government to go in, and vice versa.
So if you're knocking on the doors and you find yourself in that position, how do you try to change their mind then? How do you get that message across to them that you shouldn't do it the old way? How do you really try to convince them?
I think the biggest push is that we are a grassroots political organization. The fact that the top of the food chain and the 1%, it's lonely. They are the money that supports the political campaigns of the Liberals and the Conservatives, and this money goes into subsidies that then the fossil fuel and big pharma get right back into their pockets. So they pay for their political campaigns, and then they see subsidies and buyouts, such as spending $4.5 billion on a pipeline, is simply unacceptable. In an age of climate change, the Liberal Party made a commitment to the United Nations in the Paris Agreement talks and said that these are our targets we would like to meet. And by buying this pipeline, it is not going to happen. People think that we need to depend on fossil fuels to have a strong economy. But studies have shown us that we have a 4-to-1 job ratio of renewable energy, such as wind, water, and solar, over coal and oil combined. That is 4 more jobs to every 1. This looks like a stimulation of the economy and bringing more jobs to everyday Canadians.
Do you think it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle? Do you see that? Are you ready for that potential fight, if you will?
Absolutely. I think there's only up from here, as we are a small riding party. And I think that I'm definitely prepared to make a difference in my community and in Canada. This is why I decided to go into politics, because I think that everyday Canadians should be represented by everyday Canadians. I want to change what it looks like to be a politician, and I want people to feel like they can see themselves in me and running for office.
And you're going big right away. You're going right to the federal level. Forget about provincial, forget about municipal. Was it just based on timing and schooling, or do you feel that this is the right next step for you?
Obviously, it didn't hurt that I happened to be graduating within the next few months, right before the election. But also, I think that I want to make the biggest difference to the most Canadians as possible. And I think that by running on the federal level, I'm able to do that because I want to impact the lives of all Canadians. And by creating new legislation and making new policy, will improve the lives of the most people as possible. And that's something I really would like to do.
You mentioned, you talked about fake news a couple answers earlier. How are you going to go about engaging the younger voters to make sure that they know the difference between fact, fiction, and fake? Is it going to be all about social media for you, Victoria, or are there other branches and avenues you can take?
Well, definitely social media helps by making a transparent campaign. Just today, those who follow the Greens Hamilton and my personal social media know what I'm up to and how we're approaching this. But I also think that science has told us what we need to be focusing on as globally and as Canadians. And I think that fact proves by academic journals and academic research has shown us that climate change is real, it's something we need to worry about, and it negatively impacts all other aspects of my campaign. So not only do we need to worry about climate change impacting healthcare, such as air pollution, water safety and security, like pollution causes cancer, asthma, lowers the life expectancy of Canadians. So I think that though we are not just a single issue party, climate change still negatively impacts all other branches of our platform. And so that's something we really need to focus on. So by combating fake news with evidence, scientific fact, I think is a really strong aspect of our campaign, because if you're not lying about it, you don't have to worry about what you said.
And I hear everything you're saying, and it all truly does make sense to me. However, I've been through a few elections, both at all levels, and sometimes fact isn't sexy. Sometimes you have to throw out there to get the other things for the headlines. And we've seen that with what Premier Doug Ford has done. Let's talk about the beer and the license plate and the alcohol. And we see that at municipal. Is your party prepared to stray away from the fact, to do whatever you need to do to maybe get the votes as well?
Absolutely not. I think we're the most transparent political party out there. Our Vision Green policy is available online to every Canadian at the Green Party website. And I think that it's solely our goal to convey what's best for Canadians as a whole. And so by singling out things like dollar beer while simultaneously cutting funding for autism, cutting teachers, healthcare, streamlining 52 EMS services in Ontario to only 10, these are simply unacceptable. And I think that we don't have to spice up why we're saying and stray away from things we might be talking about, because these are core values of everyday Canadians. This isn't something that we need to push for to make it seem like our party is interesting. These are just core values that I think everyday people appreciate and understand.
Let's get back to, I mentioned earlier, free tuition for all, and I think we kind of just got off topic a little bit. How does your party, how do you see that kind of rolling out? How do you see that being fair to everyone that has already had to pay for tuition to get through their schooling?
I think the argument, like, I still have student loans, and I think the argument that, well, what will we do with people that currently have them or people that have already paid, is just that why wouldn't you want a better generation coming up? Like, these are the people that are going, when you're in a retirement home, these are the people that are going to be running the country, that are going to be doctors and lawyers and everything like that. So why wouldn't we want a better generation taking care of us in our age? I think that it's something that we should still push for, and we have seen it roll out in Norway successfully. And not only when you have free post-secondary education do you have people that are happier because they picked a job career path that they wanted to go into, not based on things like how much it would cost to 7 to 8 years at medical school, but simply because that's what they're passionate about and that's what they want to do. So happier Canadians, and we see that in Norway they have a higher GDP rate because of it, higher life expectancy, and so these are just facts that we want to create a better Canada for all. And so I think that free education is a very straightforward and simple way to do that. Instead of spending $4.5 billion on a pipeline, we could be spending that on free education or things like universal health care. Stop going into making Canadians pay for things like medications that should be a staple and like easy access to Canadians.
So if Canadians aren't going to be paying for the health care and for tuition, who would then be paying for it then?
Companies that have never paid taxes in the history of their existence. It's unacceptable that we're still providing mass subsidies and tax breaks to corporations such as Facebook, GM, pipelines. These are just simply unacceptable, and we need to stimulate our economy by doing things like free education and helping out everyday Canadians, and not just scratching the back of a fossil fuel corporation because they got me elected into office.
Some would say, and you mentioned that you have some student loans as well, you can appreciate your education more if you've had to go out, earn it, get a part-time job, burn candles at both ends to really push through, as opposed to just saying, here you go, here's a free education, and then you walk out and then you expect that 40-hour-a-week job sitting behind a desk.
Well, I definitely don't think after the housing market crashed and we can't get jobs, the inflation has increased and our living wage has not. We don't have anything close to what we should have in order to stay out of poverty in this area. And I think that we need to focus on bringing Canadians a better life. I forgot the other part.
That's okay. A couple of things regarding your specific topics in your platform, the Ancaster well. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I think that a big part of our platform and Green Party policy is access to free water. And this is something that has been in the Ancaster area for many generations. And to have it blocked off, saying that the water is now unsafe when independent studies have shown otherwise, for corporate gain through development of a nearby land area is unacceptable. We should have access to free drinking water, and these Ancaster citizens have been doing so for their entire lifetimes and have now been told, no, this water is unsafe when it is not. And this was done in order to develop nearby land. Mm-hmm. So corporate greed is not in the interest of everyday Canadians, and we should have not only free water access everywhere, but we shouldn't be restricting it when it's something that was already available to Ancaster citizens.
We have some guests coming on a little bit later from the young entrepreneurs, professionals coming in, under 40. We've had a lot of millennials on this show. Are you surprised that your platform doesn't have more information or more strategic ideas towards how millennials are going to be looked after moving forward?
I think that we have a strong stance on what the young people of our country should be looking at. I don't want to graduate and be forced to take an unpaid internship. I think that these should be banned across all of Canada, because if we're working over 40 hours a week, we should be paid to do so. I think that we have a strong connection with millennials. As I have said, we're all very focused on what our future will look like in Canada, and the IPCC report told us from the UN we have a very small window to do so. And so I think that we connect with millennials on that level, that this isn't an intergenerational issue anymore. This is an issue that's happening in our lifetime, and we shouldn't have to worry about whether we should or shouldn't have children based on what the climate of our planet looks like.
We were talking off camera. You're hoping to get your business cards just in time for this weekend, because we'll probably bump into each other at McNabb's 50th anniversary, which is kind of cool that we went to the same high school. Many years apart, though, folks. Let me just say that. What is next for you? Business cards coming up, door knocking, signs. What does the game plan kind of look for you, Victoria?
Yeah, so basically, I actually still need to submit my signatures to Elections Canada. So the Green Party has unanimously voted me in, but that's still next on my to-do list. So being able to canvass my community and tell them why they should allow me to be on the ballot is something that's really important. And though we can't put out lawn signs until the writ drops, you never know when the election will be called. And so just being prepared for that, ordering lawn signs, and getting out to all the festivals. So we've recently put in our application to have our Green Party booth at places like the Ancaster Fair, Pride Fest, Busker Fest, Dundas Cactus Festival. Yeah. We've got them all.
Get out to all of them. I know I've asked you a bunch of questions regarding some topics we had here. Is there anything that you wanted to get out that I may have missed, Victoria? I'd like to give you that opportunity right now.
Basically, I just want to make it clear that the Green Party is no longer a wasted vote. This isn't something that if you want to ensure one party doesn't get in, you vote for a different party when you truly do want to vote for the Green Party. And I think that our wins in PEI and BC have shown voters that this is something that they can commit to and feel confident in. I also just want to say that as a young person, I'm committed to the riding, and I want to take this opportunity to show that we can change what a politician looks like.
Yeah. Victoria, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Really enjoyed it. Very well spoken. Wish you all the best as you move on.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Up next, Hamilton, we will take a look at what's ahead for Hamilton's young professionals and entrepreneurs as we head into Young Professionals Week. Coming up next.